change in the fundraising sector has never been greater. But innovations in technology are evolving faster than our ability to understand them. Are these advances good or bad? Do they have unintended consequences? And what is the application to the global fundraising sector? That's what we're here to find out. Welcome to the Fundraising AI Podcast, your up-to-date resource for responsible AI for the global fundraising community, hosted by Nathan Chappell and Scott Rosenkrantz.
Hey there, this is Nathan Chappell. We're here for another episode of the Fundraising AI Podcast, and I'm here with a special guest today, which I always love because it's like one thing for Scott and I to just talk about all the nerdy things and who's working where and what models came out, but it's a whole nother thing to bring somebody in from the outside that has different perspectives. So today I'm really excited to be joined on the podcast by Puff Story. So on your label it says Sophia Puff Story. I honestly feel like this could be an entire podcast in itself. Could we get into the name first, Puff Story, and Three-Sided Cube, who you are and why you're even here? And you may not even know why you're here, so we could figure that out together.
Absolutely, absolutely. So real name Sophia, but everyone knows me as Puff. It is an affectionate nickname. I don't smoke. I'm not a dragon. Apparently, according to my husband, I'm quite huffy puffy, like I'm quite an animated character. And I think I got introduced to Duncan Cook, our founder, probably 25 years ago, a long time ago now. And I was just introduced as Puff and the nickname stuck. But I'm one of so there are 3 business directors at Three-Sided Cube, 3 being the magic number there. And one of the other business directors is called Sophie. So if you're going to have Sophie and Sophia and Duncan.
That's hard.
Yeah, exactly. Can get quite confusing. So I've just always gone by Puff, to be honest with you. And all of our clients, my kids sometimes call me Puff. Like literally everyone has known me as Puff.
That's funny. So that goes way back then. You know, I was like, does Puff mean something different in Britain than it does here? And I think of Puff, like, it's funny that you mentioned dragon and smoking because I hadn't gone there, but I'm thinking like a puffball, like, because the first time I met, you're like full of energy and like, you know, I mean, just kind of like this puffball is kind of like endearing and full of energy and life. So that's kind of how I equated it, but I thought it was interesting.
Which is amazing. And you touched on the fact that I am British. I am actually over here in the US. I've been over here for about 5 years, but the thing is, it's almost, Puff has kind of become a brand over the years at Three-Sided Cube. I mean, I'm quite an energetic, and I would say we're quite playful in terms of our brand here at Three-Sided Cube as well. So it works for us, but I don't know how that translates from a British culture to an American culture.
Yeah, you know, that's interesting. You know, one thing, and I'll want you to describe, and we'll get into Three-Sided Cube, but which is an interesting name in itself. But I will say that your website is one of the most playful websites. To your point, like, you know, from a brand perspective, it stands out. It's very endearing. We'll put the link in the show notes so people can check it out. But I mean, it really is very vibrant. It's playful. It doesn't feel like you're kind of boring, just kind of run-of-the-mill kind of thing. And so, I mean, and even your AI adoption report, which we could just touch on too, but you have like these video vignettes that kind of break up the data. So you have like data, but it's presented playfully, but then you have video vignettes that kind of bring it to life. I think it's just very, very thoughtful.
Thank you. Do you know what? It means a lot when you hear someone else say that. And to be honest with you, we do hear that quite a bit, but that really kind of intros us to who we are at Three-Sided Cube. So our mission at Three-Sided Cube is to change millions of lives for the better. And we do that through designing and building what we call tech for good. So technology that has a positive impact, okay? We thrive, we absolutely love working on projects where we can change a life for the better. We can make a beautiful, positive impact. We have a very, and I'm going to say this because I'm biased and I absolutely love Three-Sided Cube, but we have a very talented team who know what it takes to design and build products that people love to use, that they enjoy to use, and that shines through our website is actually really important. So I look at the website we have today, and obviously it's evolved over the years, but the website we have today is fairly new. We actually set out to create that website in a day using AI.
Wow.
I will say we failed miserably, and it probably took in the region, I would say a month, 2 months to actually from start to finish. And we did lean heavily on AI to do that. But I think ultimately, whilst AI can increase, like it can make everything faster, it can make some things easier, there are still some very important parts, and really understanding what makes a good product and how that
Sure.
resonates with the audiences.
Yeah.
That's what we're really, really good at.
The human judgment. So go back. So your three-sided cube is from the UK traditionally or historically, but you live in Florida of all places. So is that an expansion of three-sided cube into the US market? Is it just you got tired of the rain and the gloomy sky and you just, it started getting cold and you wanted to go to Florida?
So, you know what? We've been going for around 15, 16 years now at Three Sided Cube. Our head office is in the UK. And I would say, and this was a happy accident, it wasn't by design, being really transparent. But for the first 10 years, I would say about 70% of our revenue was coming from the US. And we were servicing all of those clients from the US, which we did it, and it was happening, and it was happening well, and we were growing, and that was brilliant. But naturally, there are some challenges when you are servicing from a different country. So we made the decision back in, I want to say 2019, which feels a lifetime ago now. It was before COVID.
Well, anything before COVID is a lifetime ago.
Yeah, yeah.
This is.
So back at the end of 2019, we made the decision, okay, I feel like, or we feel like we're in a place where we could have boots on the ground in the US now, and we could explore this with more conviction. But I think, want to say back in January 2020, myself and Duncan, our founder, came over to the US on a recce. We visited a few states, a few cities, lots of different places. And, being very, very honest, we were viewing this with two different lenses. From a business lens, what's going to work well for the business, our current clients, potential clients, but also if it's going to be one of us physically moving ourselves and our families over here, it needs to work for us personally. And I think people have lots of opinions, and you listen to what is portrayed in the media. People have lots of expectations and opinions on what life in a different country might be like. But sure. I think until you've actually tried it, you can't really speak with conviction about it. So we made the decision in January 2020. We would it would be me. I would be moving myself, my husband, and I had 2 kids at the time. And I should clarify, my kids are fine.
They're still there. Okay, good. Yeah, just at the time.
Yeah. And we made the decision that I would be based in Chicago. And Chicago, ideally, we wanted to be Eastern just because of the time difference with the UK. We loved the areas that we were looking at in Chicago. We had quite a few clients in and around that area. It was pretty central, so we could manage maybe East and West Coast more easily. We made that decision, and then COVID hit. Well, we didn't know what it was at the time. We managed to get on one of the last flights out of the US back to the UK. COVID hit, and we put everything on pause, and we were like, oh, we don't know what's going on. I think we were with everyone else. Like, we didn't know how we would navigate the next chapter. And as it happens, crazily, we grew during COVID, and we expanded, and we made the decision that we would still follow through on that. So the visa process was very complicated, but we managed to get boots on the ground, aka I think I landed in August 2021. But as you pointed out, I'm in Florida, I'm not in Chicago. So we were advised by an attorney to go somewhere where we already had ties. And my husband's brother lived in Florida for business reasons. And we were advised to go there as a first stop. Just go there, take your kids there. And we did that. And I am still here.
Well, I mean, it makes sense because COVID never happened in Florida. So, I mean, that way it made it a little bit easier. That's it's a great story. And I have a lot of friends. I just joke. I have a lot of friends in Florida. And now I'm, basically I'm Central Time, but a little bit more East Coast, not too far away. So that's super interesting. So this is just for background, Scott and I get probably 4 or 5 requests a week for people to be on the podcast. And we don't have time to entertain most of them. But I did, for some reason, I think you just wrote a really compelling, or Claude, email just saying why this could be interesting. But we got on the phone and I thought, you know what? I think your vantage point, the longevity that you've been working in tech for good, your vantage point from the UK perspective, also, I just thought there's a lot of things that we talked about that were like, yes, like, why don't we unpack some of that just so our audience can learn? And Fundraising AI is really a global audience, but most of our guests are US or sometimes Canada centric. So I want to peel back the onion on something really quick. Right before I hit record, we were just doing the usual, check on each other and, how you're feeling about life. And I'm dealing with all kinds of like house remodel drama and all that kind of stuff. And then you had just talked about pace, and you were talking about the pace of life, the pace of business, everything's just fast, and use the analogy of it's like, or someone used it like the analogy of like sprinting in a marathon. And I think that resonates, well, it definitely resonates for me. It resonates for a lot of the people that I talk to as I travel almost every week and talk to audiences and nonprofits, is that the pace seems to be different and faster than it has in the past. And you've been in this space for, then you just said like 15, 16 years. And so you're used to technology and you're used to like what the pace of fast technology tends to move at a fast pace anyway. But is it just a bias that we think it's faster, or do you just think that, there's reasons for that just, it's like you can never just catch up anymore?
Yeah, it's like unprecedented rate of change right now. It's not like anything I could compare it to be honest with you. I've not seen this happen before. Like, I remember when the internet came out and then you had websites, that was a thing. And then I remember when mobile phones came out and that was a thing. And I remember felt like it was fast, but what I'm seeing now is there are so many tools and so many updates, and it's overwhelmingly fast in every area. And we have been on a journey ourselves over the past couple of years, to be honest with you, where we have transformed. We use AI, yes, but we have embedded AI in terms of our processes and how we operate as an agency. And we are making changes, or, probably daily in some teams, but weekly. And it's consistent all of this year, definitely. And that feels like the new norm for us. Like,
sure. Yeah.
I can't compare it to anything else I've ever seen.
And I think this is also, there's, I don't know, a signal or a prophecy for the nonprofit sector in this. So whereas technology has always moved a bit faster and a bit more disciplined. And when I started Virtuous just over a year ago, we worked in sprints, right? Like most software companies work in these sprints, and they're just like these short periods of time where you're like, okay, we have to achieve this thing in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And that tends to feel fast because you're doing something, you're achieving it, and then you're moving on to the next thing. But from the juxtaposition, I wrote an article in January about 2026 being the year of agentic and how that is going to change everything. And I was thinking more about how it changes the nonprofits and they start to create some efficiencies within their organizations. But I probably definitely underestimated the impact that it would make for like me and our work. So like to the point now, like we've enabled and empowered every single person to be like an AI expert within the organization. And the expectation is that they're just solving problems. And we found ourselves in a thing where, sprints don't even work anymore because it could take more time to hold a meeting than it is to solve the problem. So then it's just like empower everybody, have them solve the problem in lieu of the meeting, but have a good quality check process for that and then push it out. And I do think, whereas the nonprofit sector thinks they're a bit immune to that, what it represents is a flip in the org chart. The org chart is no longer you hire people to do jobs. You now assess what jobs need to be done, what AI can help do those jobs, and then what people are the best to manage the AI. And that will come. It's already coming. And I think as the pressure, well, one is I think it's a result of the people that are using AI are outperforming those that don't by a big margin. And then that will continue to force that narrative a bit.
Absolutely. But you touch on a few things there. I think so obviously we design and develop software. We design and develop our own software, but we have created our own operating system at our agency that is pulling data in from many different sources. And this is live data. So we're fundamentally changing the way that we operate as a business, as an agency. And that feels normal to me almost now. Like I'm just like, yeah, cool, this makes sense. But if I step out of that and I look in the not-for-profit space, of which, most of our revenue is coming from the not-for-profit space, I'm not seeing that same viewpoint, that same action from them, because a lot of people are viewing AI as, oh, we're using these tools, so we're using AI. They're not looking at embedding it as part of the process. Agentic AI, like creating their own dashboards and empowering people to do this. And I think there's so many different reasons why I feel like a lot of people are very hesitant to talk about it in the not-for-profit space. I don't know about you, Nathan. Like, we did the report, and I think you've done one too, and you were talking about these talking heads to try and get people to openly talk about AI. I think that was 6-7 months ago, was really hard because people were just very nervous to talk publicly about anything that they may or may not have been doing,
Well, yeah, I think it's fascinating because you had shared something also before, which is like that report. Your report was done in 2025, which was only not that long ago, but it feels outdated, right? And that is just representative of the change and how things move. I mean, ChatGPT came out in November 30th, 2022, so 4 years, right? Or not even 4 years. So it's amazing to think of the scale of change that's happened in that period. And I do think that where this is really a change management thing, not a set of tools. So the organizations, and in our adoption report, it was very clearly delineated that the adoption's very high. Like we had about 92%, but only 7% were seeing major strategic benefit. And it's because the 93% of them are just looking at it as a set of tools. It's just like another email to them. It's like another form of a tool to do something a little bit faster incrementally, versus the 7% are looking at their work at a foundational level. They're looking at it as a new operating system for how they actually function. And that's kind of what you're describing within your own organization. And I don't think nonprofits are immune to that.
No, and they're really not. And like we have lots of conversations on a daily basis, and the sector is naturally averse to risk. Risk is not a comfortable word or thing to many people in this space, but you have to, I think, take risks in this space. And the only ones that are going to push forwards or survive are going to be the ones that take those risks, dip their toe in the water and make sure that they're doing something in this space. And here's the thing, you need to have this like culture of experimentation and enabling your team to be able to experiment, and they're going to make mistakes. But as long as they're learning from those mistakes, you can move forwards and learn and hopefully not make those same mistakes again.
Yeah, that's one of the things I think about a lot, because I spent 20 years as an accidental fundraiser, and frankly, and I've shared this openly, not proudly, that I didn't incentivize questions more than answers. It was very much that, the work that needed to be done was binary, essentially. It's like, this is success and this is not success. Just do it. Put your head down, keep your eyes on your paper. And you're talking about building a culture of curiosity, experimentation, trial and error, failing fast. And I think people really underestimate. So I become convinced because, I've helped deploy AI solutions at a few hundred nonprofits, like large scale enterprise nonprofits. And at some point realized like 50% of them were successful and 50% of them were not. And the difference had nothing to do with data or models, it had everything to do with people and culture. And so, it's interesting that you're seeing the same thing. I'm super curious because there's a bias toward the US being more progressive technologically, just in, Silicon Valley's here and whatever. Yeah. But one of the things that struck me when we had a conversation a couple of weeks ago was just kind of some of the innovation that you were seeing come out of the UK and how you're kind of seeing either UK being ahead of the US or not. But I'm just curious, like, where is that there's an adoption side, and then there's the actual practical use of it and like benefit from it?
So really good question. And I have to be really careful because I don't have loads of data on this, but from my personal experience, I can definitely talk about, I'm seeing more, and they tend to be smaller, more entrepreneurial, not-for-profit, to be honest with you. We have, and I can't name the organization publicly, but what I can say is they are a safety organization, a fairly good size, but still very lean and very nimble. And we have transitioned them from writing code to prompt-based engineering. And that the benefit to them, is the fact they're able to complete a lot more scope for the budgets that they've had historically. But what it also opens up is anyone can do this now.
Right.
So
Right.
don't necessarily have to be a developer. Like a project manager can do things that they could never do before, or a product owner, or,
Right.
whatever role you might be. And I think it opens up a lot more possibility. And we did this quite a while ago now, but that was a big switch for that particular organization.
Mhm.
I've seen that happen on several organizations now, but I'm not seeing that happen in larger organizations
Right.
because process and compliance and
Mhm.
everything,
Well,
I think things are still worked out.
yeah, there's a bias there too. It's interesting because not from you, but like I was on a call yesterday and talking to someone about AI enablement within their organization. They're kind of a nuance. They cover the Western U.S. and cover a lot of ground. And he's like, so where AI is helpful, I'm sure like it's like a lot of the orgs that we serve are 50 people or less. So I'm sure AI won't be helpful for them. And so the bias is still like AI is an enterprise thing. It's like if you're, Coca-Cola and, whatever, or financial institution or Samsung, you're using AI. And I thought it was fascinating because our report and your report showed the same thing. It's like smaller actually means more nimble. It means less bureaucracy. It means less silos. It means, frankly, because you're like stretched for resources. It's whatever the quote that I always get wrong, which is like invention or necessity is the mother of invention. And that's how it is in a small nonprofit. So it's interesting that you're saying the same thing, is that the small, nimble ones are just like, going after it essentially.
Absolutely. And we're seeing that in the demand as well for development services from not-for-profits. I see quite often now people coming to us not because they need developers, but because they need someone to architect a solution or make sure a solution is compliant and it is capable of scaling. So it's the more like it's kind of further down the line.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of, most of the conversations I have now with people have like a working prototype or even a beta that they have created themselves, whether it's with Claude or, another tool of choice. It's, I would say, probably 80% of the conversations I'm having at the moment, people have already created their own proof of concept or beta. And I think that's showing you that the tools out there are enabling so many more people to bring something to fruition. What I get frustrated at is just because you can build something or do something doesn't mean you should necessarily do it. Like, you need to come back to the why. What's the problem that you're trying to solve here? And how do you know if you've done that? Like, what is your measure of success or measures of success? And I think I've had, in the past week alone, I've had, let's say 10 briefs come through the door. And I'd say 80% have been heavily AI generated. And then technical specifications, they're missing the, what are you actually trying to do with this piece, with this tool, with this product? And how do we know if this works? Like, because you need to understand that before you just start building stuff, like.
Yeah. Well, there's a data point in your report and it mirrored ours almost. And I imagine your report was largely UK based nonprofits, or was it both? Or
it was both. I would say that we had a higher percentage come from the UK. So I couldn't sit here and say it's fully representative of global numbers, but probably heavily biased towards the UK.
Yeah. So one of the data points was actually fairly similar. And I was a little surprised, actually. Well, I was surprised when our report came out because the number of organizations that have AI governance was like 51% in our report. And I think it was like 53% in your report, somewhere pretty close. Number one is it surprised me because when I ask by show of hands, like how many people of your organizations have an AI governance policy, all the hands go down. I wasn't surprised in your report that the number was that high because the EU has been far more progressive, restrictive. Well, data just in general, overall, historically, is more protected, but also the EU AI Act was the first kind of unilateral AI act in the world that actually from the top down. And so in the EU AI Act was enacted a few years ago. Now it's kind of interesting because they're repealing some of it because they've realized that it's actually putting them at a deficit in from a competitive perspective. But I would have thought just because of the sensitivity to data in Canada is very similar, like the UK in this, is that there's a different essence of privacy that I thought there'd be, even the delta would have been higher, that there would have been more orgs in the UK that were focused on governance than the US. But it's an evolving thing, I guess.
It really is an evolving thing, and I think it can be so time consuming for organizations. And I think when when people start to really get under the hood and start taking this stuff more seriously, it's like a switch, right? You want to make sure that everything's compliant, everything's in the right way. And we've certainly been on a journey, but it is continuously evolving. And I think that's what's exhausting. Like, you have to stay up to speed with these things. I will say it is massively noticeable from someone that has come from the UK to come to the US, and views and compliance around data is wildly different. And I think it varies by state as well. So
it does, yeah.
Added complexity, but people just, I don't have to be really careful what I say. I want to say it's not taken as seriously. It is taken seriously, but it's approached very, very differently. And I think we naturally, because a lot of our team are based in the UK, kind of like baked into our processes and our people, just because that's the way we've had to operate for quite a lot of our clients.
Yeah, so, I mean, the US is the most lax and progressive in the sense of like all data. And I think that just means, and it's been this way forever, that most people just assume all your data has been replicated everywhere in the world all the time. You know, it's interesting because Germany just passed a law yesterday that Google is liable for their AI generated search results, because it's not just showing a website that something somehow came up because of a keyword, but they're compiling web results. So they're legally responsible for them. And that's going to open up a wave of different things. When the US is like, I mean, we all kind of know, like, you know, when you ask, it doesn't matter how many people you ask 1 million people, like how many people, you know, use a Facebook product. So whether it's, you know, Instagram or WhatsApp or Facebook, pretty much it's like 80% of the world population, something like that. But how many people trust Mark Zuckerberg? Like nobody. But so they knowingly or subconsciously trade privacy for convenience for this thing. And I think in what I've seen in other countries, there's a little bit more, but like, why? Like, why would you do that? And so not to go down this, the other part that I want to hit on, because there's two pieces to this in the success side. One is like what you said, something was loosely like, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. So it's governance and values that really help govern that. But the other part you alluded to was like, how do you know what success looks like if you don't have a goal? And so this other piece of it, I see in our report, it's one of our 6 pillars of AI success, is like, yeah, it's like all the people using, you know, these tools to write emails faster and do things incrementally better. But if you haven't set some goal and then you're measuring toward that goal, how do you know what success looks like? And I'm assuming you've seen the same thing in the organizations you're working with.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think we're very opinionated here at 3-Sided Cube, but we talk from experience. It comes from a good place, and it, you know, a lot of that is experience. But I think there is some frustration that people aren't waking up to this and they aren't responding to change. Just because you've done something and it's worked for the past 10 years doesn't mean there's not a better solution.
Right.
Especially now. And
yeah, you can assume the way you're doing things is not the best or only way to do them. If you've been doing it before November 30th, 2022, 100%, your best practice is no longer a best practice.
Yeah, and I think I understand why, certainly in not-for-profits, but you do see it in all kinds of organizations, you can become complacent. And I think now is not the time to be complacent,
right.
And to think, okay, well, that saves me a job from, you know, re-looking at that or re-evaluating that. I think we have to be mindful of this stuff now. It is really interesting. Something came up earlier this week and we were talking about SaaS and some of the long-term contracts these companies were trying to get people to sign up to. And I'm like, absolutely not. Now is not the time. You want to be signing a 3 or 5 year deal with a software provider. Like, we are not especially for not-for-profits.
Yeah, no, it's changed quite a bit. I mean, the subscription economy, and now CRMs, because the implementation is so long, like our clients are very sticky. Like no one, you know, decides I'm going to switch my CRM and then like 12 months later, you're going to do it. But what a CRM is in the future looks very, very differently in how you interact with your data. And so you want a lot of flexibility. And it's super important, because if you do lock yourself into a contract with an organization that is going to like represent the past, you're kind of screwed because like other orgs will outpace you, really rapid fashion. So yeah.
And I think we all need to understand that consumer expectations around interfaces, so like how we interface with
Yeah.
CRMs or what CMSs, like all these tools, it's going to evolve massively. And
Yeah.
if you're not seeing people change or continuous improvement,
Oh
it won't.
yeah. I mean, the consumer expectations absolutely is already changed. And so what you think an app should do or a website should do or, whatever whatever piece of software, it's like very quickly going to feel old and stale. It's like, why would I have to click on 5 things? I bought a Diet Coke at an airport and it was like a self-checkout. I think I counted 7 things that I had to press. Like it was like, do you want this? Do you want this? Do you want this? Do you have a bag? Did you want to round up? You whatever. I'm like, oh my God. I felt like I was there an hour to buy a freaking Diet Coke. And I'm like, what is going on here? So that user experience, the user design becomes super, super important. So I want to tip my hat to you and Three Sided Cube. Like, what are the types of clients, like if you had a magic wand of the type of nonprofit that you'd work with, like what would they look like? Like, would they be in a specific sector? Would they be a specific size? Would they do a specific, like, would they have a specific appetite for innovation? Like, who's your ideal customer?
So honestly, right now, I would be very much focused on behaviors. So
Mm,
those that have an appetite for risk, they don't have to be full throttle on it, but they have
sure.
to have an appetite for risk. I think those that want to explore and experiment and push the boundaries, because I think that's where you're going to get innovation and you're going to get the good stuff. And those that are transparent and can help manage stakeholders or internal stakeholders, external stakeholders. I think they are some key behaviors, and they're what we're looking for when we're qualifying, certainly at the moment. I think it's funny because coming over here to the US, when we were talking about our mission here at Three Sided Cube, everyone was saying that our approach was quite, how do you say it over here? I think it's niche. I say
Hmm.
niche, but there's the pronunciation. And it's actually not. Like, tech for good encompasses so many different things. And we always say, look, we're not exclusive to not for profits, but we do heavily work in that space. It has to have that positive impact. So it could be health, it could be education, it could be something else like disaster preparedness. There's lots of different areas. So I don't think I would be specific in terms of sector or skills necessarily, but I think behaviors for me. And you know what? I
Hmm.
think that's my view in terms of our team as well. We have a much bigger focus on behaviors than we have ever had before. And I think that's what's hopefully going to help us keep on the front foot moving forward.
So your best customers or the customers that you're moving toward, like what size are they generally? That kind of like as you're listing all these things, I'm like, well, you just ruled out like a ton of not there. There people are like, oh, I'm out. Now I'm curious, like the ones that you've had like success with, and are they have that appetite for they're curious, they're willing to like try new things, they bring in other people.
Here's the thing. I don't think for us, I can, because I have incredible clients at very large organizations over here in the US, but I also have incredible clients in startup
Nice.
type not-for-profits.
Yeah.
So it really is the people. And
Yeah.
what I find is even in these big organizations, which, sometimes you might want to describe as oil tankers, they're just so slow to move. There are pockets and hubs
Right.
in these organizations that can move fast and they do want to experiment and they do have that appetite for risk, but you've got to find them. And that's
Yeah.
what's really, really hard, to be honest with you, because it's not going to be everyone, and nor should it be, to be honest with
Sure.
you.
No. Right.
I can't sit here in front of you, Nathan, and say, yes, these maybe just these small not-for-profit organizations under, let's say, 20 or 50 million. It's not, categorically isn't. I'm seeing these pockets of incredible people and teams in all different sizes of organizations.
It's interesting about your organization because you're a software company, I think by classification, right? So you're a software company, but you represent as almost like a design agency in a lot of ways, like showing up and getting people to think differently. And I think that's refreshing because I think this is where AI essentially brings those things together because it used to be like these two disparate types of things like design, UX, and all these things over here. And software is over here, but now things happen so much faster. And, it's something that's so fascinating. I was on the phone with Woodrow Rosenbaum from Giving Tuesday last week, and he was just talking about how we were laughing because sometimes we're still surprised in how intuitive AI is. So he saw this need, and it had something to do, I think, with his daughter's hockey league and this like really bad way of tracking data. And he was like, he went into Claude Code or whatever, and I forget what he used, Lovable, and he created this thing, or he told it to create something, but it actually was so intuitive that it actually added on features that he hadn't even thought about. And he's like, oh my gosh, so this is like just based on all the world's knowledge, like, yeah, there's these other features that actually would have been really helpful. And I guess that's the lesson here is for nonprofits to, number one, I think unlearn what they think AI is, because I think most people by far, like 92% adoption, I would say, I don't know, 85% of them have an outdated view of what AI is. They're still thinking about it as this tool to write an email faster or, write a poem about your dog having a picnic on the moon, but they're not thinking about reinventing their organization and thinking about like what jobs need to get done and what AI can help with those jobs. And so it sounds like you work really well with the organizations that are asking those questions. They're asking, like, they know there's a new world ahead of them.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think we can achieve a lot more with those types of organizations, to be honest with you. But it is scary. It's intimidating. And I can't sit here and say we have all the answers. We are learning, as is everyone else. But I think we can see the opportunities and we can see the potential. And what you will get from us is the drive and the dedication to push boundaries and to try those new things to see what we can do.
So if you had one piece, we'll just end on this. If you had one piece of advice for a nonprofit of any size about where the future is going, I mean, you've been on this space for a while. You know that today is the worst AI you'll ever use. Like, is there a piece of advice either you'd give your best friend about AI or an organization you care about?
Yeah, it would be to the people. I would say go forth and experiment. And I think, to be honest with you, experimenting outside of work can be really helpful. It's funny because I've been in software for a very long time, but I'm not a developer. And before I joined Cube, I always remember one of the developers challenging me and saying I couldn't build something. So I went away and I think I built an Android app. It was awful, but I did it. And I
Yeah,
did it to
that's
the
awesome.
point. And I think with this stuff, you can't go in and be like, I'm not a developer, I can't do these things. You have to kind of take that hat off and go forth and experiment. And I actually learned so much I had a problem in a very similar fashion to the guy that you just mentioned with his daughter and the hockey piece. I had a challenge with one of my daughters, and there was something with school. And I went away and I built something in Claude Code to see. And I learned so much by doing that. It then helped me almost view what I was doing in work with like a different lens. So, if anyone is listening to this, my one piece of advice would be to go away and experiment outside of your day job with something a challenge that you have in outside of work, and see what you can do to solve that challenge. And I think you might just surprise yourself because I guess almost become obsessed with solving it, and then you want to stay ahead and keep improving it and making sure that particular solution or product works. And I think that does teach you so much more than maybe just doing something in working hours, which feels a little weird to say.
Yeah, no, I mean, 100%. Reid Hoffman was quoted recently saying the same thing. The best way to learn is to try something outside of your domain. So I had Claude Code design my entire garden based on companion planting and how the sun went from east to west and how my trellises would get filled and cast a shadow on the strawberries and all the things. Plan a vacation, help your kids' hockey league, whatever it is. And I find the same thing is that once you see what AI can do, you can't unsee it. Yeah. And then that kind of the Medici effect kind of kicks in, which is like, oh, if this did this over here, now I can see my work a little bit different. I love that advice. I think it's super practical. I want to thank you for your time to be able to spend some time just talking about the nuances between, the US and the UK in this front, but also just, I think for approaching the nonprofit sector with a sense of curiosity and innovation with Three-Sided Cube, and just honestly for making it fun, because I always wondering, like, where did the fun go in fundraising? And somewhere it disappeared. So I think you're bringing back some of that fun in fundraising.
Thank you, Nathan. And thank you so much for having me on the show. And if anyone wants to reach out, you can reach out Sophia at 3sidedcube.com or on LinkedIn, Sophia Puff Story.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you, Sophia Puff Story. We will put all the links in the show notes as well and hope people reach out to you. Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Fundraising AI podcast. We'll be back soon with another episode.